Welcome everyone. My name is Erin Dussault. I'm a product leader for virtual production at AWS, and I'm incredibly excited to be the host for our panel today, Pushing Innovation and Accessibility with Real-Time and the Cloud. I'd like my panelists to introduce themselves. You want to start with Angus?
Hi, Erin. My name is Angus Neal. I am Chief Creative of a company called Praymaker. We're one of the first 100% cloud-native studios in the world.
My name is Miles Perkins, and I'm Industry Manager focused on film and television with Epic Games.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm Ken Nakata. I'm the Virtual Production Creative Executive with Amazon Studios.
Thank you all for being here. This is a topic on everyone's mind lately. Over the last few years, the advancement of real-time technology and the growth of companies in the cloud, we've seen a major shift in how creative content is being produced. Today, I'd like to deep dive into how the shift is allowing companies to innovate and how we can leverage these advancements to become more accessible to everyone. And I'd also like to touch on what the career opportunities might be adding to the mix as a result. Angus, I wanted to start with you. You've been innovating for years. I watched a talk you did talking about innovating as a kid. You launched Praymaker in 2020, a 100% native cloud platform, even before the pandemic. Why did you decide to adopt a cloud native platform, and how has it affected your innovation, and how have these advancements in real time in the cloud changed your creative process?
Thank you, Erin. Thank you for the invite to be here. I'm really honored to be part of this panel. So in answer to your question, so when we started Praymaker, for a long time I'd been watching what had been happening with all the big cloud studios and just watching the kind of the leaps that had been happening. And for many years before that, I was in a business that was just constantly having to update technology and constantly having to cart in kind of millions of dollars worth of hardware, and then a few years later cart it out again. What the cloud has given us is the ability to innovate and allow us to pivot very quickly in terms of when new technologies are introduced. It gives us also the ability to try things without having to make huge capital investments. It's really been a bit of a kind of game changer for me in my career in terms of how to actually build a business and just how to stay innovative even when you're a small startup company. I think one of the most exciting things about it as well is just this confluence that's happening right now of a lot of different technologies that are almost reaching maturity. Real-time game engines, they've been around for a while, and the cloud has been around for a while, but it just happens to be at this point that they feel like they're maturing to a point where you can literally do a complete switch over from physical hardware-based solutions over to completely cloud-based solutions and game engine rendering, real-time rendering. It really is. It's almost that both have happened kind of at the same time. It just so happens that we've set ourselves up to be 100% cloud-based from the beginning, and we've actually been utilizing game engines for quite a few years, innovating with them, trying to use them in order to create content for a long time, and the two together is incredibly powerful.
Have you seen a shift in how you're interacting with your clients?
Absolutely. We've seen a huge shift in the way we're able to interact with our clients. It used to be when we were working traditionally, we'd basically give clients these landmarks that you'd have to hit. You'd storyboard things out, you'd then do previs, then you then do kind of wireframes, then you do blocking, and then you go through all the different stages and you get them to sign off every single stage. With using real time, it's kind of like we've been able to compress all of that together so that people can judge a lot of things almost simultaneously. So as you're actually viewing an asset or as you're viewing an environment, you can actually adjust the lighting in real time. You can adjust, often you can adjust kind of textures in real time. The most important thing is you can move the camera around. You can kind of move the camera, you can change the depth of field, you can change the focal length, move the lights. It's very much like being on set. And I think that's the biggest change. Clients absolutely love being part of the process and part of the decision-making process. And I think this basically just opens it up to them and includes them in the process. I think that's probably the biggest change that I've seen.
And Ken, I was going to go to you. There are some creative filmmakers, studios who are fully embracing this on-set virtual production workflow and really pushing the tech forward. After this last year, it's pushed some that may have been late adopters also into this space. What have you seen in terms of a shift in the creative process now that those that might not have embraced this workflow are diving in head first, and how is real-time technology kind of playing into this?
First, thanks for inviting me to this wonderful panel too. To answer that question, yeah, it's, like you said, it was the early adopters. Like Angus said, it was early adopters who first jumped in, and then with pandemic, kind of was the catalyst to, out of necessity, many creatives had to now stay at home and still go through the approval process without being on site or with a group to do so. So it it has been a wonderful process of showing them these new tools of how it works, and you see light bulbs go off on many of them, and some of them are still a little bit confused or wary, or they just like the old way of doing things. But as they see the new tools come about, they start to see how it's freeing up their schedules, it's freeing up and the biggest thing, it's starting to free up their creativity. A lot of it is like what Angus is saying in terms of compressing a lot of the approval process, where at one stage it's like, traditionally you can't make that approval yet. We're not at that stage yet, in the process. What's happening now is that because it is getting compressed, that restriction is becoming less and less. So they're finding a certain freedom, and the fear is not knowing what it is. That's usually the resistance that you get. But as soon as they start to figure out what it is, then the fear starts to go away, and then they realize, oh my goodness, there's this whole new level of creativity that I lost, or that I used to have, and it's now coming back. And that's what's wonderful about how the tools were kind of, it's almost, I don't want to say forced upon some, but it has been forced upon some, and because it's such a small community, word is getting around about some of these new tools, and then some of them try it, some of them like it, some of them don't. But as a whole, everybody's, some are jumping on board head first, and some are testing the water with their toes, and that's totally fine. Everybody needs to come in at their own comfort level, and that's our job. Our job is to make sure that they are comfortable coming into this space, and we build these tools at different levels, for the totally tech savvy and ready to go, to the as familiar as possible in the traditional way as possible, with the slow and ease and analogy or analogous tools that feel super familiar to them, so that when they come in, they realize, oh, it's not so different. It's actually better. And that's pretty much been, it's the whole spectrum of reaction from the entire community.
Kind of sparking their creativity again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a freedom.
Freedom, yeah. Miles, I was going to come to you. Working backwards, if the ultimate goal is to bring the technology up to a place where the creatives are just creating, what things do we still need to solve for that aren't there yet? Faster GPUs, software advances, communication tools, data management, and what does that path look like?
Yeah, I think, first of all, thank you very much for having me also. I do appreciate it. I think that actually a lot of it has to do with workflow. The way I look at it right now is that a lot of these things that we're seeing right now, they're not new. They're things that have been around for a little while. There have been advancements in one area, but not necessarily another. We're now in this moment where there's kind of a perfect storm where things are starting to come together. It's kind of analogous to me to the iPhone, where it wasn't that there was anything like fresh and brand new when it stepped upon the scene. It was that it pulled all of these things together and created a certain ease of use. So whether we're looking at software, hardware, whatever, what we really need to do is pay attention to workflow. What we're doing is we're creating a creative sandbox where people can explore, where they can iterate, where they can feel like there's no differentiation between what is in the virtual space and what's in the physical space. And that's what's new. This ability to actually go in and treat both just the same and use the same nomenclature you would as a director or as a filmmaker, as a DP, as a set designer. That there is no real barrier between these things. And I think one of the things, and Ken touched on this a little bit, is meeting people where they are. So meeting a filmmaker where they are in what they want, how they want to engage with this technology. There are some who are more technical and they see it that way, and that's how they understand. And there are others that are completely immersed in the story and the feel and the emotion of what is being created. And I think that what we need for the future is many more of us who are in the technical space to focus back on that, like focus back on how can we lower the technical bar, so that filmmakers and storytellers and something that makes this just readily accessible, so that if you do come to a cloud solution, you come in a way where the technology is sorted out for you and you can just jump in immediately and begin to create. And I think that's what we're going to start to see here in the near term future and in the long term.
Kind of taking a more traditional linear pipeline and making it a post pipeline, making it a bit more flexible.
It's not only a linear pipe, because I do think I always make this analogy. It's kind of like the television commercials about pharmaceuticals that you see, where they're like, it's going to solve this, but you're going to have this laundry list of other side effects, And I think we've lived in that world for a little while, where traditional computer graphics, it has this laundry list of side effects. And I think that what we need to do is we need to focus back on how did we really do filmmaking in the 80s and the early 90s? Like, what was it that allowed us all to be ready and to make the right decisions, so that when we show up on set, we're able to get the best out of each department, where we're not deferring things to later on, where we have actors who are able to be in an environment that they can see just the same as they see the physical space, they see the virtual space. That the decisions that are made early on or in production carry all the way through to the end of production. And I think that's really what I think people need to frame it in that way, and to understand that ultimately these two tools are for filmmaking. It's for storytelling. And and getting back to that, I think that one of the byproducts has actually been our linear workflow, that you have to compartmentalize all of these decisions that you're making. And I think we're going to move back to a scenario where you're making decisions the same way you would in a physical environment.
And Angus, I'm going to come back to you on that. With you have the cloud platform. Are you seeing that the creative process being able to kind of move wherever you need to go based on your clients?
Absolutely. I think because I've had a lot of experience in the physical kind of world and kind of bare metal, as they call it. And, there's a lot of pre-planning that has to go into that. You've got to plan years ahead. Okay, we've got to buy X amount of this, X amount of that. And you've got to kind of get it all installed and set up and spun up. And all those decisions you made 6 months, a year prior, you hope kind of come good with where you are right now and for a couple of years ahead. Now, the wonderful thing about now that we're completely set up in the cloud is that you can pivot, you can change. Like if NVIDIA releases a new graphics card and like it's got a ton of texture memory, and you go, oh my goodness, we can actually run this AI program on this, and you can literally rent it for a few hours, and you can kind of do what you need to do, and then then let it go again. It's not this instance where you have to go and buy $20,000 graphics cards, and then you kind of go, well, we got to get our money back out of this thing. Should we actually buy it? So it frees you up to kind of really experiment a lot more, and it frees you up to be a lot more innovative. And I think that's what's I think, been the hallmark of my career is trying to innovate, trying to find new ways of doing things that have been done in a traditional way. I think that's what's always driven me. Like, I believe there's always a better way for doing something. I constantly tell my children, like, don't just do it because you've done it that way before. See if there's a new way. There probably is going to be a new way. And if you find that new way, how exciting! You can do it, and it's like learning a new instrument. And I think that's where we are right now. We're kind of learning a new instrument, but we're realizing that it's actually more than an instrument. It kind of provides us a lot more, I think, creative bandwidth and technical firepower. It really is. If you're wired that way, it's incredibly stimulating. And for ProMaker as a company, we are so pleased that we actually started in this direction, because for one, we were able to weather the storm of the pandemic without it kind of completely crippling us. Luckily, we were able to just work from wherever we needed to. But most importantly, it allows our staff to actually change the way they think. And if you put really great technical people and great artists together, and you say, don't worry about the tools, don't worry about the technology, like, just play, try something. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Let's move on to something else. And creating up that spirit of innovation, and you're not trying to kind of build this pipeline that's locked in stone. You're constantly trying to find new ways of doing things, and ultimately you stumble across things that really surprise you. And I think game engines is that. Using game engines to create content. They were never designed to do that. They were designed to kind of be making games, but to actually use it to make content is extraordinary.
Yes, it is. And Miles, actually, I'm going to come back to you because it feels like there's a huge push in the industry to help make these tools accessible to the masses. Epic started the Unreal Fellowship. Companies are offering open source code. With this push, and what changes have you seen in content creation as a result? And why do you think it's important?
The thing is, so making these tools accessible, whether we're talking about the software, Unreal Engine ultimately being free, assets being free, whether we're talking about Quixel assets, you can readily have access to them, or the marketplace. Also, free education. These are kind of new things where there have been all these barriers to entry. What I've noticed actually is that people who traditionally might not jump into these areas are. So DPs actually getting their hands on the engine and starting to block out shots and do tests ahead of time. Directors, I've seen a couple directors who are actually getting into the engine. This isn't something that you would traditionally see, whether that's just because of the hurdles of actually having access to it, or the lack of interest, or that there's not that immediate feedback that they're getting when they're trying something out, where it does feel very natural to them as it would in the physical space. So from our point of view, and this really comes all the way from the top. Tim Sweeney believes that the technology should not get in the way of creativity. And this means that it should be readily accessible. It should be free. You should be able to go in and augment it in any way that you want. So that's why, you also see that our engine, the code, you can readily access the code so that you can make changes as you see fit. And this is the kind of philosophy, I think, that is going to, and has actually, inspired new creativity. And I love what Angus was saying, really, about this ability to go out, try, and potentially fail, but try and not feel like, oh, if I fail, it's going to be incredibly expensive, so I don't want to try things. I only want to basically paint by numbers. I don't want to be that puzzle person that figures out all these things and try and fail and succeed and fail, and I think that's what's exciting right now, is that all of this is readily accessible. There's nothing to it but to do it.
Yes, and Ken, I think to you, on set, with these technologies, and are there new roles that are needed to run these virtual production shoots? what kind of skill sets are needed, and how are people getting trained?
Yeah, that's a great question. The roles come from, I mean, it's coming from everywhere now, and we really do need everybody in terms of uh, obviously filmmaking and the people on set, visual effects with all of their tools and the way that they've created pre-visualization, tech viz, post viz, um, live entertainment with their ability to use projections and LED display, other types of displays, and real time technologies that have been in live entertainment. And then of course game tech. So you're talking about these wildly different industries that have huge overlap, but still those technical skills need to come onto set, and then everybody needs to be talking the same language. Now, talking the same language, they're using the same words, but might be using them in different ways and in different resolutions and in different dynamic ranges. So a lot of these, and in different frame rates. So a lot of these things is a clash in the beginning, but as you work through it, these roles are starting to be defined more, and and continuing to be defined. And Epic has been, uh, they've really helped with a lot of their education in terms of, what types of roles could be done, because a lot of it is experimentation. And I will say that on different sets, the roles are different on every set that I step on. Um, because there is so much overlap, a title is currently just the title, because they might be covering camera tracking and LED hardware, so as opposed to the game engine itself, because not every person on set is in the game tech side of things. There's a lot of other real-time video distribution, uh, the compute side of things, and the sync and camera tracking. So yeah, it's been tough. And the people who do have like the cross section of all of these things, they're in high demand, and they're gobbled up, and training is a big part of everybody's. I would say that that's one of the big things right now is like we're all in this together, and we're all trying to train everybody up together, because we're all in the same boat. We're all innovating at the same time, trying to figure out how to do this at the same time, and then trying to figure out how do we get the people trained on these systems that we're building uh, up and running as soon as we can on AAA, productions. There's a lot of money involved here. These are high stakes. We need to, I don't want to say it's all that. It's actually the whole spectrum from indie all the way up to the top. This is a democratization happening again. It's like everybody's getting into this, because um, as we've heard, Miles is saying it's essentially free. The assets are essentially free. That's a huge lowering of the barrier that everybody's jumping in, and that's part of the training. That's part of getting genuine interest in, and then whoever's, because of this genuine interest of artists that are jumping in and trying to and training themselves or getting into training programs, is that they're seeking these jobs out now, and because the barrier is much lower, there is more opportunity. I mean, if you have 3 years, 4 years in this industry, you're a veteran. So a lot of the people in here are of course, they're like 20-year veterans in other fields, but it's kind of a leveling. That's what I mean by democratization as well, is that there's a little bit of a leveling happening, that people with 3-4 years experience can be leading a stage, and I'm
And
seeing it happen.
I'd like to add to that, just jump in because it's exciting. I've been
Sure.
in this industry for 30 years. And what Ken is talking about here is there's been I've never seen anything like I'm seeing right now. And speaking to the SIGGRAPH community, I think it's really important that the community understand the opportunity that is here. And the opportunity isn't only for, just within visual effects or just within previs. It's visualization in general. And visualization is a language. It's a robust language. And I think that the talents that the SIGGRAPH community have can be leveraged now, not only within the post-production process or the previs kind of thing, but across the entire spectrum, not only within film and television though. And that's the thing that people I think need to start to understand is the talents, the amazing talents that they have can be leveraged in many different fields right now. And that is to me, that is just incredibly exciting as we start to redefine kind of what entertainment is and what visual communication is. So I just wanted to put that fine point on what Ken was saying as well.
Yes. Um, Angus, I'm actually going to come back to you too with this great need for content out there, and your ability to work globally and scale is needed. How is that helping you attract talent and availability, and what kind of different skills are you seeing out there, kind of like Miles and Ken are talking about, and are you finding more talent being able to kind of search globally?
So talent has always been kind of one of the keys for any company I've been involved in. You really want to try and attract the best talent you possibly can, and that's technical talent, creative talent, production talent, and traditionally that talent has had to live in a big city. They've had to live either in kind of Los Angeles, New York, London, one of the main kind of cities in the world, in order to be in the industry of kind of creating content visualization, as you said. But the great thing about the way that we're actually set up in the cloud and the way the actual cloud hubs are located is people can kind of be scattered around the world and be collaborating with one another, even in the same environment. And that really changes your reach in terms of the type of talent that you're looking for and how far you can access them. Um, New York City is not for everybody. It's noisy, it's bustling, and it's an expensive place to live. But just a couple of hours south, or a couple of hours north in the Hudson Valley, it's a beautiful environment. It's full of artists, full of creatives, and we're finding people that now can actually really work from those locations and be as productive as they would be if they're back in the office. And pushing that even further afield, we've got people all the way spanning from Los Angeles to London, kind of working on projects at the same time in the same time zones. Whereas previously, had we been physically based on bare metal hardware, the latency would just be too much. But because we're kind of literally built on the backbone of the internet, we've just got the most incredible ability to kind of reach a broad reach of talent. So the reach is definitely there. The one thing that I think that we still need to really focus on is training. There is a renaissance happening right now in the visualization, the visual effects industry, and just in creating content in general. But the need for skills and need for people, the ability to actually learn these new tools, it's never been kind of more pressing. There is so much that needs to be taught, and it's very hard to teach people remotely. And that's the one thing that we're kind of finding out, is that I think we're always going to have a blend of physical on-premises kind of core staff that then gets augmented by a wider kind of augmented staff. Just because to train someone, you've got to kind of be in the same room as them, or you've got to be in the same environment, or you've got to have a constant connection. And training is one of the things I'm really passionate about, because we just can't get people trained up fast enough, to be totally honest.
All right, I don't think I have much time left, and there's one last question I wanted to ask everyone. With this intersection of the real time and the cloud, is there anything that surprised you, and or is there anything that you'd like to see surprise you going forward with this? Let's start with Miles. You want to start?
Yeah, sure. You know, the the thing the thing that surprised me actually is the commonality, the commonality with really what we've seen historically. Like the things that we see here are not really new. And I think that's the important thing for folks to understand, is that what we're doing is we're just going back to kind of an easier, less technical way of telling stories. And to me, that's the thing that is all exciting. I have to say that since getting kind of stepping foot onto a in-camera visual effects stage the first time 2 years ago, I was just, I mean, I was so thrilled. I was so exhilarated. Every single day since then, I've been just, I mean, I can't imagine another. There's only been one other time in my career when I've been this excited. And and it's really because I don't know what's around the next corner. All I know is that it's empowering people to tell stories in ways that they could never tell stories before. And that to me is just, I mean, I'm so excited about what I'm doing. I'm so excited about what the community is doing, and I'm looking forward to seeing the stories that haven't been told.
Ken, you want to go next?
Yeah, I completely agree with Miles. It's the community, and it's also, you know, it's been a surprise in the sense that um, it's also bringing in different industries, and it's bringing back techniques that are older techniques, but they're still valid techniques, but just updated. And it's become this filmmaking renaissance. As Angus has put it, it is. The community, that's been the big surprise. It's seeing everybody come together, and I think it's because of that moment that Miles described. Everybody is now looking at it, and we're building all of this not you know, for the filmmaking process. And so it's exciting, and we're seeing this process actually get elevated at such a height, and everybody's jumping in and not sure how it's going to end up, but amazed at everything, at the input of every other industry. It is very exciting, and it's also you know, it's timely in the sense that um, as the process was becoming very specialized, this has become a filmmaker process again, and it's given freedom back to the filmmaker, and all the processes that we were all like scattered and trying to do our little job and make that one part faster, is we've all widened our scope again. We're all either filmmakers, or you know, most of us are empowering those filmmakers, and it's the filmmaking process that this is why we're doing what we do, and watching each other, you know, we get inspired, and we need, you know, and it's community. So I agree with Miles. Hate to steal part of his, but you know, on top of that, that's been my surprise.
And Angus?
Oh my goodness, there's so many things that have surprised me. I just, let me just think. So I think first of all, I'm kind of blown away that we actually have a company that is operating 100% in the cloud. We literally do not have a single server on premises, and we are actively creating content, hiring staff, growing. And I kind of thought that it would be possible, but actually doing it and feeling our company growing is extraordinary. That blows my mind. I think the other thing that really has surprised me is just how the appetite for that people have for kind of this new technology and this new wave that's coming in. There's so much excitement in the industry right now about this. I think Miles was actually saying it's been kind of, he hasn't seen this type of excitement. He saw it once before, but I totally agree. When you get onto a set and you actually see virtual production in action, when you have all of these different disparate kind of techniques and components, you've got physical camera work, you've got motion tracking, you've got LED panels, you've got game engines, and suddenly it all comes together. And when it works, it's like, wow, that's mind blowing. And I think that's just getting that feeling. You kind of it makes your hair stand on end. Well, it does for me. I'm a little bit weird that way, but I get really excited about technology and when it kind of really just kind of nails it. And I think that's the bit that I'm kind of, I think, most surprised by right now, is that this appetite, this hunger, and this excitement. And I don't think there's a better time to be getting into this industry or learning about it.
Well, I'd like to thank you all. Thank you, Angus. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Miles. I'm blown away by everything you guys are doing, and can't wait to see what you all do next. So, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.